it seems as though Finland is now going to be applying for NATO membership. There's been some talk about Finland and Sweden joining, and the leaders of Finland have effectively announced that they're going to seek NATO membership, and Russia hasn't announced that they will retaliate in some way from this. So it's pretty scary. Again, just considering everything that we've been talking about for the last couple months here, with threats of nuclear war and whatnot, and the fact that it's getting to this point now where it's we don't know what might happen if Finland seeks to join, if that would mean a military conflict or cyber attacks or what kind of tit for tat kind of retaliations we might see. And something that I kind of worry about, and Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, when he was on my show, he kind of alluded to this, is that there gets a point in escalation where it kind of goes off the rails and people can't really control it anymore. So I just kind of wonder, are we there? Like, are we getting to the point where they can't even back down anymore? Because there were chances, it seems, though, for peace talks. China offered to mediate peace talks at the beginning of this, back in February, and we didn't want them to do that, and we threatened to sanction China and all this stuff. And now we're at the point where it's hard to see where there is an off ramp. And that was another thing too, is early on they kept talking about building a golden off ramp for Putin to let him save face in this. And somehow that completely, that entire idea and concept that was around in the media a lot at the beginning of this has completely faded. And we had the backdrop of all the information war that we've been doing around this, is also claiming that Russia was going to be using chemical weapons when we knew that they weren't and whatnot. But anyway, yeah, I just kind of wonder, is there even a path for peace at this point, or are we just gone off the rails with retaliation after retaliation?
Yeah, a couple of things. Number one, I think that Finland joining NATO is a problematic, and Russia could very well determine that it's such a threat to the Kola Peninsula that they attack Finland. That's possible. That is possible. I wouldn't rule that out. I wouldn't rule a military operation against Finland out. I think Russia's in for a dime, in for a dollar. I think they've made it clear in December when they released, when they sent a list of demands for their border and their security to the US and NATO. I think they made it clear, we feel right now that you guys are trying to take us out and we don't have anywhere else to back up, and we're in for a fight. A couple of things about Finland, and this is kind of funny. I mean, there's nothing really funny here, but it's kind of funny. About 2 weeks ago, a guy named retired general by the name of Barron, was testifying before the Defense Committee of Parliament in the UK. And they asked him about, the UK's readiness. And he's like, we're not really ready militarily. And they said, well, if Russia were to attack us with cruise missiles, could we defend ourselves? And he's like, well, if there was 2 or 3 cruise missiles, maybe. But if there's a volley of cruise missiles, we can't defend ourselves. So then they ask him, and you can find this, I read it, I believe it was in the Independent. So then they asked the guy, well, what if we needed to protect a country from a Russian invasion, say Latvia, for instance? And he says, well, if we were to send our military to Latvia, they'd be destroyed by the Russian Air Force within a week. In other words, we're no match for the Russians. Like that shock, who didn't know that, right? So here's what's funny about this. We'll laugh at this in the face of doom. Boris Johnson went to Finland and said to them, we will guarantee your security against a Russian invasion if you sign up for NATO. Really? That's like me saying, look, if you threaten Mike Tyson, I will guarantee I'll stand between you and Mike Tyson and make sure that you're safe. Yeah, you can run away while he beats me to death, but pretty much one punch will do it. I'm doomed. You ain't getting far either. So I'm not going to be able to protect you from Mike Tyson, right? It was absurd. And that shows the level of absurdity going on in Europe right now. You can just say something. Hey, if the Russians attack you, I'll send this guy sitting next to me. He'll hold off the invasion until, the Russians come to their senses. And there's like some Benny Hill or something guy sitting next to him. That's what it's come to. Now, the question being, will NATO, and here's the question, is there going to get to a point where NATO decides we're going to send in troops? We're going to get involved in the conflict? That's the question. Escalation. 2 things. My inclination is to say no. And that's part of that is from listening to people who really know what they're saying for this reason. They'd lose quickly right now. The Russian military is the 2nd most powerful military in the world. However, The most powerful military in the world, the United States, is all over Africa and AFRICOM. It's 200 bases in Asia. It's all over South America, bases everywhere. It's spread so thin because it's an empire that even in Europe, the US only has light armored divisions, doesn't really have much, right? The armies of the only country that has a decent army in Western Europe is France. And they're kind of spread throughout Africa, and really they're no. So in reality, NATO has nothing when it comes to military. The joke is that you could put the UK military now, as far as active brigades, in a soccer stadium. So the truth of the matter is, if you talk to people who really know what they're talking about, NATO doesn't have a military that could contest Russia. So if they say, we're going to go into Ukraine, they get flattened in no time. And that's the problem. If they were to suddenly decide militarily, we're going to contest the Russians on the Russian border. Keep in mind, you've got this unbelievably powerful military that's concentrated on one thing: protecting the border between Russia and Eastern Europe. All of their military might and power is right there. Do you really want to go into that buzzsaw? So NATO is not powerful enough to do that, and it doesn't want to go in there, and it's going to get ripped to shreds by hypersonic missiles in no time flat in the Russian Air Force, and might I add, and a sophisticated air defense that is specifically set because the Russians know, what does the West do? They attack you with planes, they bomb you, they attack you with planes, and they don't really like to send the troops in. So they've got this sophisticated integrated air system that says, we're going to stop them from doing that. They're going to have to fight us on the ground, and we outnumber them 100 to 1 on the ground as far as mechanized divisions, and on and on and on. NATO is in no position to do that. So I suspect that NATO, which means what? Which means that NATO comes in with troops, they get dashed to bits by the Russian military. What do they do then? Retaliate with nuclear weapons. And the Russians have more nukes than they do, and hypersonic missiles. So it would
I mean, a nuclear war would be the end of life.
Right, Earth, exactly. Right? So that's my point. So it's not like you're going to go in and even have a nuclear advantage with them. It's the game over. So the question becomes, do the neocons want to stick a gun in their mouth and pull the trigger? I suspect not. And I suspect also that there are people in the Pentagon who are pulling back the reins saying, guys, you guys can go as far as you want to, but if you send us in here to suicide, we might have to say no. And you've got a constitutional. So I do have some level of optimism, and of course I could be wrong, that NATO does. And what do you see keep coming out of the mouths of the leaders of NATO? Hey, we don't want World War III. They were just saying it the other day. Whoa, we don't want to get involved in a war with Russia. Now they're dangerously stepping their toes up to the edge, but actually to just jump in, I suspect that NATO knows what I've been saying far better than me, and I would suspect that that's not going to happen. I will add this: time is on the side of, darn that, don't you just hate Google listening all the time? Time is not on the side of the EU and American leaders, because going into the next few months, the lives of Europeans is going to be a living hell. If I know people in Europe and I talk to them and they're like, my company's saying we don't know how long we're going to keep going because the expensive for fuel is too high. Our electricity and fuel costs for our company has gone up 387% and blah, blah, blah. As you start to see their economy crumble, and it ain't going to be long doing it, the people of Europe are going to fly into a rage, and they're looking for regime change in Moscow. Well, they're going to get regime change, but it ain't going to be in Moscow. So it's going to be a whole lot harder for them to confront Moscow when they're confronting hungry, angry citizens on the streets of Berlin and London and Paris.